There's been a real interest on your part, I think, in characters who express themselves by various means without the privilege, or sometimes only perceived by you, the privilege of language. In the case of the Death Row films, you have an extraordinary character, Talbot.
And in a way, it is linked, although I can't make the link easily. A man, for example, an Aborigine in Australia, who is the single last final survivor of his language group. And he's considered being mute, the mute one, the silent one, because he has nobody else to talk to.
The Paul Holdengraber Show, filmed at Andaz, Fifth Avenue.
I saw him pacing up and down, an old man pacing up and down at this assisted living place. And at the end of the corridor, there's a vending machine for soft drinks. And he has a pocket full of coins. And he inserts a coin and listens how it rattles down in the slot, and then chants to himself and paces up and down, goes to the coin machine again. He has nobody else to talk. That's the only one with whom he talks, the vending machine, the slot. At night when he's asleep, the employees would put all the coins out of the machine and put it back in his pocket so that he had a partner of dialogue. And of course he's dead by now. That was more than 20 years ago. He's dead by now, and his language, his culture has disappeared. And sometimes the illiterates carry a form of culture which is going extinct, but of course fascinating how they have to deal with the world and how they take the right decisions, much better than the literates sometimes. And in one of the films of Death Row, or Into the Abyss actually, there is a young man who by coincidence ended up on my set, was brought in tow with a young woman who was a barkeeper where the perpetrators would normally hang out.
You cast him.
You have to have an eye for casting, even as a documentary filmmaker. And I said, Jared, please stay along. I immediately liked him. I felt the callus in his hands. I knew this is a working man. And I have worked as a welder in a steel factory, night shift, so I know what it means. I immediately had a rapport with him. And he speaks about an incident where somebody in a fight stabs him with a screwdriver, a Phillips. He takes off his T-shirt and is stabbed through the chest, all the way through the chest. And a friend of his throws him a knife. It lands at his feet. The most legitimate moment to grab the knife and kill the man in self-defense. He looks at the knife and doesn't pick it up. He doesn't pick it up because he wants to see his kids at night. And Wilder, even 30 minutes later, he's back at his job, roofing a house. And it's just wonderful. And he was an illiterate, and I immediately poke into this. How does he understand the world, and how does he connect, and how the pride of being able to read and write now. At his age, he learned when he was a grown-up, and he learned it in jail. And he's an absolute hero. And,
there's something about this kind of wholesome American in...
Yes, something very good about, by the way, in this case, Texan. The heartland of America produces this kind of people. And in the same league, I see a man like Mike Tyson.
Really?
Well, because... he comes really from the underbelly of society and was in criminal activity as a child already, and had, I don't know how many arrests before he was even 15, and angry and rightfully angry, of course, and all sorts of catastrophes in his life. And now being out of jail and having his career over, or during his jail time, and so he became quite erudite. He is wonderful in discourse about Hannibal in the Second Punic War. He's wonderful to talk about Alexander the Great.
Why that choice, do you think, of subject for him?
I do not know. It's heroic figures. in history.
Have you spoken to him about this?
Yes, we spoke about Hannibal, and he spoke about Hannibal, and I spoke of the even greater hero who is neglected, Hannibal's victor, Hannibal's opponent, Fabius Maximus, who was endowed with a epitheton ornans, with a byword, cunctator, the cowardly, hesitant one, the hesitant, because Fabius Maximus, after the two most cataclysmic defeats of the Roman Republic ever, Cannae and the Battle of Trasumina Lake, realized if we do another open field battle against Hannibal, Rome will perish. It will be the very end, and Rome came that close to extinction. And he withdraws, and has a war of attrition. He never faces Hannibal in open field battle. He attacks some stragglers in the rear guard, or attacks his supply lines. And finally, Hasdrubal, the brother of Hannibal, comes with a big supply fleet and is destroyed near Sicily. Hannibal, hearing that, says one significant thing. He says, "I know the fate of Carthage." He knew Carthage was over; it would be destroyed.
Delendum est. I remember that.
Well, that is Scipio.
Scipio.
Yeah, ceterum censio Carthaginem esse delendam.
Yeah.
And by the way, I am of the opinion that Carthage has to be destroyed. Yes, and would say it every single time he would speak in public. But the greatest of all heroes for me is Fabius Maximus, because he was vilified, he was ridiculed, he was not taken seriously, and he saved Rome. He saved Rome because of not showing this crazy bravery his predecessors showed, and lost the decisive battles. And it's wonderful to talk with Mike Tyson about that.
Well, I was just about to ask you, how did Mike Tyson react to what you taught him?
Oh, he sees my point, and he's going to read Livy again, probably.
And
the second Punic War.
There is something attractive to you in Michael Tyson also, because this is a boxer and there's an athletic character.
Yes, somebody who has to go through fights against opponents that are much bigger than he is, because Tyson is not a big man. He's very agile and enormously aggressive, and has an eye for situations, physical situations. But he's not the big man like George Foreman or so, but he would beat men much, much bigger and heavier than him.
Because
with all the gifts as an athlete, and all the anger accumulated over years and years and years of adolescence and childhood, he puts all the anger into this. And he knows that sometimes his anger alone and aggressiveness alone has cost him the fight, has given him defeats.
I wonder if there's a connection there with Maximus.
And Fabius Maximus, that he's the one who has been vilified, the one who has been described, downtrodden and forgotten, and made the fool. And so, no, he was the greatest of all. And that's how I connect very easily with Mike Tyson.
Well, you connect
with whom I spoke about.
Well, you connect also with these characters that are downtrodden.
In a way, yes. Livy's second Punic War, I always have with me.
Wherever you travel.
No, whenever I do a film, and whenever I knew there is going to be difficulties out there, and I read Livy for consolation, and I read the Bible for consolation. I go into the Psalms, for example. I have Luther's original translation of the Bible with me when I know this is going to be hard. and I seek refuge with his translation of the Psalms, for example.
So, literature...
No, it's more than literature. It's Livy's description of a war that was unwinnable in a way for Rome, and yet Rome survived. And the Psalms have a beauty and a consolation in it that even touches those who are not religious. There's a power of language in there.
I got a place to go in the morning, going to work. I got a place to go when I ride.
Film that Andaz, Fifth Avenue.